horrifyingly lo-fi zine. Ask me, I have some. It's called In Darkness My Heart Was Won. I couldn't have guessed how she would react, but my mother handled my gender-bending future goth boyfriend with remarkable grace the first time she met him. He accompanied me home that first time, after driving us both back from the South Florida Renaissance Festival in his little egg-shaped Honda. I asked him in at the top of the driveway, partly out of mild curiosity. He had shoulder-length black hair and tidy, plucked eyebrows. I had gelled bangs and an O-ring collar. We walked up to the door together in matching dresses. Inside, we stood by the door and waited. "This is my mom's house," I narrated lamely. Future goth boyfriend looked around, his arched eyebrows high, and then my mother wandered in from the shade of the patio. "Hi, kids," she said, not missing a beat. "Hi, Mom. This is," I began. But goth boyfriend had his own gravity, and he stepped forward, unafraid. They shook hands. And then she was eyeing him, the ridiculous, stretchy, synthetic black dress, its long sleeves, its slim fit hugging his narrow hips. "Do you want some spaghetti?" asked my mother. I made a lot. We had dinner together, these weighty forces of my life and me, and no one ever mentioned clothes. The night we became official. He came to my house dressed as Eric Draven from The Crow. Complete with black and white face paint. He also had a copy of the film on VHS and a dead rose. "Will you be my Shelley Webster?" he asked. We watched the movie on the family television in the living room. I overlooked the obvious. Shelley's appeal from the beginning is her need for rescue. She's Draven's property, darkly and thoroughly. We made out on the couch. I saw nothing weird about this at all. I waded in the thick syrup of love, and I didn't know to get out. By taking control of our situation and turning it romantic, the most important thing he gave me was a role. I was a girl, his girl. He was my goth boyfriend for 3 years, creating all my life-defining dramas, then ruling brattily over them. He brought me as an accessory to parties where I knew nobody, and then he did bong rips with strangers when I just said no. Everyone was always just a little bit older than he was, which meant that they had a few years on me. At one of these parties, I snapped back at a hippie dude who asked me a condescending question. "This one's got a brain," the hippie yelled over my head in response. Goth boyfriend was special, and he knew it. Wherever we went, he was a juggernaut of flirt. I watched him closely. A huge part of his appeal was the nonchalance with which he took over a room in his look-at-me androgyny. But he kept everyone's attention with a bright, easy, conversational style that I now recognize as purely male. Goth boyfriend caused my achiest heart nights whenever he exchanged glances with some girl as I looked on like a somnambulist, unable to react. If I wasn't his girl, who was I? I didn't know what I was watching then, but I now know it was a performance, both having the girl and wanting the girl. It was sexiness and desirability projected through the costume of not giving a fuck, and goth was intermingled closely with it. As an aesthetic, goth weeds a lot of people out, but it also invites in the people who dig darkness, and teenage girls that dig darkness sometimes have other dangerous ideals. For me, it was a powerful, if hurtful, thing to watch. In the last year of our relationship, goth boyfriend's style evolved. He quit shaving his armpits and plucking his eyebrows, grew dreads, and began to veer more towards the rivet head aesthetic associated with industrial music. We broke up a lot of times after we began actually clashing about things. I dabbled with self-harm. During one of our breakups, I dated a real weirdo, which was a move that upset goth boyfriend a great deal. I did not have a terrible time during our years together. Often we had the best time. And I saw him a year or two ago and found that he had grown into a genuine adult man. But in his time as goth boyfriend, he taught me a lot about how powerful performance and projection can be in conjuring the things you want. I learned about how compelling a personality is, and how calculating it can be, and how deciding on something is the first step to getting it. For yoga hippies, a subculture I guess I now identify with, this is called setting your intention. As a life mode, it's roughly something similar to The Secret. Positive thinking will change your life, and so on. But I learned to set my intention from darkness. And though my life these days is pretty brightly lit, I remember the lesson every time I saunter by the desk of the coworker with the espresso machine. I casually yawn, and it prompts him to ask me if I'd like a coffee.